Hello everyone, and today we'll be talking about animal cells and what each organelle does. Now, an animal cell is made up of organelles, and each organelle has a specific task to do. Now, if you are studying for a test or you're just here to learn about the animal cell, before we do, I will give you a couple of minutes to just work on this and see if there are any organelles that you might know. So I will wait a couple minutes or a couple of seconds. You can pause the video and see how you do. Okay, now we will be talking about what are these organelles and what do they do. Let's start off with number one. Number one is going to be, it's going to be hard to say, peroxisome, and you can also see number two. Peroxisomes, what they do is they facilitate fat and alcohol breakdown throughout the body. So let me write that down. Fat. This is very loose definition. Breakdown. Fat breakdown. So the next one, number two, goes to this organelle. This organelle is called the mitochondria. The mitochondria is, well, the powerhouse of the cell. So let's write that. And the powerhouse of the cell is usually for giving the cell energy. Giving the cell energy. Let me just move this over here. Next one, number three. Number three points to this little tiny speck, and this tiny speck is actually pretty important. It is called a ribosome. The ribosome, or ribosomes, plural, their function is to make, I don't need this anymore, to make proteins. Now proteins are made up of something called amino acids. And then I'm just going to say they are the protein's building blocks. I'm running out of room here. Building blocks. Okay. Perfect. So these ribosomes make up amino acids, just these large strands of amino acids that make up proteins. So these little guys are pretty important. So let's go into number four and let's see what that is. Number four is pointing to this large structure, and they're covered with these little dots that we saw earlier, ribosomes. And this is actually called the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Now, I said rough / smooth, but the rough endoplasmic reticulum has ribosomes attached to it because it looks rough. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum is one of these structures that does not have any ribosomes on it. And I'm just circling this just to show you that I'm talking about the entire thing. It's so far none of them have any smooth parts to it, but usually there's a section where it's very smooth. This is for specifically proteins that are manufactured. Its formula is manufactured in the nucleus, and we'll talk about the nucleus later on the road. The nucleus makes the formula, then sends the recipe to the ribosomes on the endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum, here, it makes something called vesicles. Vesicles are like capsules or like little pods that hold these almost made proteins. They're not quite ready. They need to go to one more process. So the rough endoplasmic reticulum, its job is to make the proteins, oops, I can hear myself, the proteins, hold on, it's in the room, encompassed, or surrounded, in a vesicle. In a vesicle. Now, a vesicle, like I said, is just, you could think of it as a sort of bubble, how I like to think of it. It basically surrounds the almost made protein so that it doesn't get damaged, because there's so many things that are happening in the cell. It just doesn't want to be destroyed. Let's go on to number 5. Number 5. Where's number 5? Number 5. Oh, up here. Number 5 is pointing to this large skin-like thing. Like humans, we have skin that surrounds our body. Well, the cell has something that surrounds its body called the cell membrane. Cell membrane. The cell membrane, the whole purpose of the cell membrane, I think I need some more room. The cell membrane, its whole purpose is to protect the cell from, it might be unwanted things. It's more generally foreign invaders. Foreign invaders. Now, these are very generic definitions, very broad definitions. The cell membrane also is used to let in certain things into the membrane. It's basically like a barrier, like a guard that doesn't let certain things in, might let certain things in. There's these little pockets that some particular things enter through. So number 6. Number 6 points to this little tiny guy. This little tiny guy is called a liposome. A liposome. Now, a liposome is like the cell dumpster or cell garbage can. Cell garbage can. And its whole purpose is when something dies, or when, let's say, mitochondria is all out of juice and just dies for some reason. After a while, these liposomes will come and basically eat it up and use its materials for something else. This is just for an example. All right, for number 7. Number 7 is going to be this little space here. And in fact, they're pointing to everything else. Just basically everything else that's not what we have or will talk about. And it's basically like the blood we have in our body. Anything else that's not organs, muscles, tissue, or skin is mostly blood. So our body's blood is comparative to this, which is the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm. The cytoplasm has a lot of functions. It fills the cell. it has its own nutrients and also moves things. It's more of a transports uh, nutrients, 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 transports nutrients, it also transports proteins, and it also transports messages from the nucleus to the outside world, or the outside world to the nucleus. So I'll just say messages as a general term, in quotations, messages. All right, on to number 8. Number 8 points to this space, but it's actually one of these little holes here. These holes are called the nuclear pores. Now, I know I'm skipping ahead of myself, but there's also number 11 and number 8. Number 11 is the nuclear envelope, which I'll be talking about pretty soon. But number 8 and number 11 do pretty similar jobs like the cell membrane, where they are for protection. So I will also write protection here for number 8 and number 11. They are just like these little pores here in the cell membrane. Just keep that in mind, except it's more of a protection kind of thing rather than a transportation kind of thing. So the nuclear pore's main job is for more protection from, even though the cell membrane does the exact same thing, this more so, right? And the nucleolus. The nucleolus is number 9. Number 9. It's the stringy stuff. And this is basically a receptor that gets any kind of messages from the outside world, like outside the cell, or from inside the cell. If there's anything that needs to be done that the nucleus needs to be or do, the nucleolus also has genetic information, but it also acts as a receptor. So there's basically 2 jobs for the nucleolus. One is for as a receptor, and it's also to store genetic information. And I will start here, room information. All right. Now, the Golgi apparatus is number 10. The Golgi apparatus. And it's this little mini version of this. And these two are very closely related. So how the process works is the DNA is like a scribe. He writes how to make the protein. He has all the info. He's like the brains behind the mission. So he's going to, or he or she's going to have the information and give it to the chef. The chef is going to half make it, kind of half make it. And then the Golgi apparatus is kind of like a garnisher who tops it all off for it to be sent either inside the cell to do stuff, or outside of the cell for it to do something else or communicate with other cells. So the Golgi apparatus is kind of like a garnisher. So I would say refine proteins, refine proteins. Okay, the nuclear envelope, like we talked about, the nuclear envelope is just like the regular cell membrane. It is used for protection. Used for protection, so we can write that. It's used for. But more specifically, protecting what? Protecting the nucleus and the nucleolus. The nucleus. All right, two more. Number 12 and number 13. Number 12, the centrioles. These are used when the cell is ready for cell division. These are used to cleave the cells apart and make them into two. So I would say the centrioles are used for cell division. For cell division. And last but not least, the nucleus. The nucleus, its main purpose is to store genetic information. The nucleus also interacts with other parts of the cell, but its main purpose is for storing genetic information. All right, that is the basics of an animal cell. I hope you enjoy.